on mute. Nope, you're all quiet. That's great. Well, in that case, that's what we're going to do next. Rich, you're in. Hello, Rich. Glad you made it. Thank you. Rachel, let's go and get on with your presentation, please. In that case. Yeah, there you go. So, and do you want to press share screen?
Yeah, I just put my timer because I've got 10 minutes, haven't I, to try and inspire you.
Well, yeah, just give or take. Don't worry. Don't worry too much about it.
Okay,
and we'll take a little bit of Q&A at the end as well.
Okie dokie. Okay, so here we go. So can you all hear me okay?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so I just wanted to try and cram in as much as I can in the next 10 minutes on how you can still secure publicity in this kind of challenging time. And actually the good news is journalists are looking for stories, and it isn't all doom and gloom, Peter, as you said. I know I'm a bit like you, can't keep watching the news, but there are still media outlets that want stories, and I'll show you good news stories, industry stories. They want people to comment. So it's just going to be a quick whistle-stop tour for you. So if we haven't met before, I help people and teach people how to do their own PR. I'm not a PR agency, and I connect you to the right type of journalists as well. So I'm here today just share with you kind of the situation as is now, and hopefully give you some nuggets that you can take away. Here we go. So the idea is to kind of support your community and report what you know if it's within your industry. So support and report. I think, you know, we're all kind of, I think we've all got over the reading process now. Last week had a really positive week. We're all getting our mindsets around it, and we're still carrying on with our business. So it's thinking of ways that you can kind of be the leader now and step up so that when you come out of this, you've still got your community behind you. They're ready to spend money again, or they're hopefully staying with you. So it is supporting and reporting, and we still need content to give them. So if there's anything going on, there's industry news that is kind of relevant to what you're doing, share it to your community, be the leader, be that, you know, let them kind of connect with you. I'm offering a lot more value. I'm offering a lot more Zoom calls to my members to say, look, you know, I know it's tricky, you've got the media database, but how can I make it work for you at this time? So kind of offer more value, which again isn't PR, but it's your community. PR is a media coverage, is all about supporting the community that you've got and the community that you want. See what's been reported, and obviously let your community know, which is, as I've said. So I think there was a couple of people last week in HR. This is perfect timing for you now at the moment from a media point of view, because BBC want to speak to business leaders. Any report that comes on that we get daily that you might be able to comment on, they're always looking for stories or people to report. So what I'd ask you to do is think about how you can help the media and how you can share your message with the media. It's still looking for stories every day. As I say, good news stories, relevant stories. Yes, some obviously who's suffering stories as well as case studies. That's always going to be the way. But hopefully you can kind of bring everybody forward in a positive way and get some coverage. And when I think about PR, when you think about PR, think about what it is you want to achieve with your publicity. I'll come on to that in a little while with a short time that I've got. But it's connecting the journalists to your market. So if you are business to business, say you're in manufacturing or you're in HR, and you're looking for a certain type of clients, whether it's coaches and speakers or whether it's manufacturing clients, try and share the news within that industry. So match the media outlets that you want to be featured in, start reading them, start commenting on them, and start reporting on them. And that's the way that you'll get media coverage. So connect with the right type of journalists. Think about how instant the media is. So if it's radio, I'm a big lover of BBC. They're always looking for content. Think about, is BBC radio station, is it your audience, or should it be talk radio or LBC? At the moment now is a great time because people have got radio on in the background because they're working from home. So connect with the journalists that reach your market, because PR and media coverage isn't about ego. It's about getting results. It should be part of your marketing strategy. And if you don't know this, this is a golden nugget. Check out on Twitter the hashtag JournoRequest. because you'll see a load of journalists that are looking for help with stories. So for example, these are just what was sent. These are just a couple that were sent, I think on Friday. So looking for cases of people who found work during the coronavirus epidemic. Of course, it's all going to be topical. It's going to be relevant now, but this is what journalists are looking for. Do you run a small, medium-sized business whose sales have increased during coronavirus? Let us know. That's for the Telegraph. I'm looking to speak to manufacturers about their thoughts on 5G. I have a few questions. If you're in technology or something like that, I think someone in the group was last week. How are employers checking what equipment employers have to enable them to work? The HR people. These are all journal requests that journalists actually use the hashtag journal requests on Twitter. Now, what's been happening over the years, this is quite an old tip now. It's still one to actually look at if you don't know. Sorry, let me just go. So it still works, but what you'll find is that you'll see that 50% at least, if not more now, is just spam. So you have to filter out the spam because it's business owners like us trying to connect with journalists, and that's what it wasn't intended for. But if you want to just dip your toe in the water, use the hashtag journal request and see what messages come up. And they will, and be the authority in your field. As we said, if you're an expert in HR, now you should be absolutely, I know your business, you're probably really busy anyway looking after your clients, but it's a great time to connect with journalists, the right type of journalist for you, for where you want to get your future clients from, because perception is reality. PR, if you're the thought leader during this time, then they'll go on to use you and continue to use you in the future. So think about, what are you an expert in, and don't feel worried that if you're both in HR, there was two ladies last week in HR. Sometimes we're completely British and think, oh, I'm not an expert, I can't put myself forward. But your job is to be a great source of information. This is what this is coming up. I'm just going to share these few tips with you. PR is about an emotional connection. So the first mistake that most people go wrong with PR is they're trying to sell their business rather than tell their story. So think about, what value you can offer. It's a bit like your newsletters. Anything you're putting out to your customers, you're trying to add value. Those are your stories. You're telling your stories. You're not selling your services. They use you as a result of them. They've connected with you in some way. They've got to know you, a bit like these networking groups, all the meetings we have with Peter and the family environment that he's got. We get to like everybody and know everybody. PR is exactly the same. So your job is to give an emotional connection, be a great source of information. The job of the journalist, they'll introduce you. They'll give you your intro and your outro and say, this is where you're from, this is where you can find and connect to this person. But your job is just to give the information. And as long as you're offering value and giving new information that matches the target audience, you should be able to create publicity. And the most important thing is getting an emotional connection and finding the right connections. So to put it into perspective, there's over 40,000 media outlets in the UK. So media outlet is like a radio channel or a TV newspaper or online now. And there's over, I think, 60,000 journalists. So 60,000 journalists, you might have 150 journalists work at the Daily Mail. You want to find the manufacturing journalist or the beauty editor or the health correspondent or the business writer. Don't just send a news press release to the news desk. Send it to the specific type of journalists. I don't know how long I've been, Peter, but it's really difficult to cram the stuff in a short time. But the two things to success is finding the emotional connection and sharing your story. And don't just think now, because we're in this kind of challenging time, you haven't got stories. You're still serving your community. So get your message out there. If you're still doing newsletters or trying to help your community, the media will want your stories in the right field. But take the time to find the right type of journalists. It's quite a lot to cram in the 10 minutes. I'll take some questions in a minute, but I'd be quite happy, and I put on here, if I can help you in any way, just drop me an email. It's Rachael, spelt funny, thank mother for that, at mediamatchmaker.co.uk. And if there's interest, I'd be quite happy to put on like a half an hour Zoom or an hour, depending on your attention span now with Peter that I've just got there. And I'll go into a lot more detail, because the simple things, how to find your story, how to be a case study, how to position yourself as an expert, and I can share all those things and go into a lot more detail in days. So hopefully that's just giving you an insight, but don't think now is not a good time for PR. Now is actually a great time because we're all working on a business. We're kind of waiting and working out how we can kind of hit the ground running when we come out of this. So you work with the media now because they genuinely do want stories.
Thanks, Rachel. You're fine for time, so don't worry about it.
Oh, okay. Well,
we've got everybody back, and what we'll do is we'll get everybody to fire a load of questions at it. I'll just preempt it because obviously before we started, and I should have qualified it and didn't. I'm not saying that all things in the press are terrible. What I'm saying is an awful lot of negative at the minute, and don't let it take you in. However, if you've got an opportunity to shout about something good, then why not use the expertise, as Rachel says, to a positive effect for you personally, professionally? Why wouldn't you do that? So, Rachel, I know that was a whistle stop at the end of the day, but shall we get some questions from everybody, please? Who's waving? Somebody wave to start, please. Nicholas, where you go? Hang on, Nicholas, you need to unmute, please.
Unmute.
There you go.
I'm actually nattering away here. I've just been rude to you at least twice, Peter, and you missed it completely.
You'll still have chance. You usually do.
Okay. Rachel, hi.
Hiya.
Hello. Do you know what I'm wondering is, did that just made me feel better, actually, just listening to, the tone of your voice and everything. And I think you're probably right. But what I'm wondering is if you could actually run through an example. I know that sounds a bit bizarre, but I mean, you're essentially saying, look, find the emotional connection in your story, find the right journalist to present it to, which will take time and effort.
Yeah.
But I mean, go on then.
Let me try and give you an example then. I don't know you all, but I know, and I've said this a few times, there was a couple of ladies that worked in HR, perhaps if you wave to me. So I'll try and use that as an example. So I don't know where these ladies wanted to get their business from, but let's say, for example, they were just looking for customers in their region. Then what they'd want to do is kind of work with the media to reassure business owners in their region on how what's the term? Is it furlough works, and how, if you're working from home, how to do all that, and what to do if you think you've been sacked and you shouldn't be. So because, and I'm recommended they go to the regional media because they want regional customers. One of those HR ladies might also say, right, I'm not really, I can be anywhere over the UK. I just want to work with, manufacturing clients. So therefore she could go to bloggers in manufacturing or the industry trade press and say, look, my clients are kind of, I'll do a survey with them and get some feeling on how everybody is. And I'd love to be able to give you those results to talk about how the manufacturing is being affected by the corona, from downtime, working from home, how they've adapted, and turn it into a good news story so that they're known as the authority. That's just one example. What I was trying to say was match the media outlets to where you want your customers from. Does that help in any way?
Yes, it does. Yes. I mean, from my point of view, I'm thinking that the radio would be a good and easy thing. I mean, apart from Steve Parker, obviously, there's also the BBC. You mentioned understand the difference between LBC and talk radio. What is the difference? I know what the BBC is. Obviously, I know that.
Understand? Yeah. See, the BBC, for example, are the difference between commercial stations and the BBC. The BBC are about 60 to 70% talk, and I know for a fact they sit down every day, a couple of hours before the show, to plan what the show is going to be about. And if you want to get onto radio, look at what's trending during that day and say, right, okay, I can report on that. So I'm going to go to the producer of the radio show that I think my audience is going to be, and put together an idea for a story. Or if you're looking for someone to comment on about the latest update from a business point of view, I'd be happy to help you. Commercial radio stations, you need to think in sound bites. They're very short 10-second soundbite, 20-second soundbite. But what you could do, again, if you've got an iPhone and you want to record them either or over SoundCloud, you could actually just record some soundbites and send them into journalists to say, here's my opinion, here's some thoughts that you could use. But commercial station is very different to the BBC channels or the talk channels like LBC and Talk Radio. And again, LBC and Talk Radio, they're more regionalised, they're a lot London-based, but across the whole of the country. So you're reaching a wider audience. So that's, I think, what I meant from that.
Okay, yeah. I mean, for us, obviously, well, for me anyway, the BBC is the obvious one because I talk a lot, so talking sounds good to me. And also regional, it's a regional thing. I mean, the Radio Hereford and Worcester is the obvious place for me.
Perfect. And the good thing with the BBC as well is they share their database. So I've been on Radio WM, you'll probably hear I'm a Brummie. So from Solihull, so I've done loads of interview with WM, Coventry and Warwickshire, but because I'm in their database as a businesswoman, I've done a lot of businesses before, I've had 3 franchise businesses, so I was interviewed as franchise expert on Radio 2 because I was in the database of the regional one as a business franchising business leader. So it can have a snowball effect, it really can, from a PR point of view. And likewise, they cross-share. So I was asked to be interviewed when David Cameron was Prime Minister to do his speech. They asked me to go on radio and actually comment on his speech. I couldn't make the interview in the morning because my daughter was quite young, but then so they then contacted me for the TV channel and said, would you want to be on the news instead? I'm like, yeah, okay. So they actually share their media contacts and if they think they've got them. So if you can start, you might want to start and dip your toe in the water with your regional, but also then it's great to get into the nationals as well. And don't be frightened to try the nationals. If you genuinely feel you can help and you've got a message that's on trend, approach them. And just another tip, and sorry, I'll shush up then. I know the journalists sit down, once I get going I can't stop. I know the journalists sit down and they see what's trending. The journalists now are reactive to the news. We are the news, we create our own news. So they sit down and they see what's trending. You can do exactly the same. Do a Google search, set up your search results, and then report to the media, say, in light of what's trending, I'd love to help you with this story.
I think that's really excellent stuff, Rachel, as ever, of course. What about everybody else? Somebody else got a question? Wave at me if you have. Or are you stunned into silence? I'll ask a question of everybody, actually, and that is, how many of you are nervous about getting in touch with the press? Wave. There you go. Some people are nervous at it. Okay, there's a surprise. Not okay. But how many of you would like press coverage at the minute in some form or another? Yeah, there's hands going. So Rachel, we're going to have to set something up again, aren't we?
Yeah, I think, do you know what? I'm exactly the same. And for those who haven't met you before, I talk from PR from a business owner's point of view. So I had a lot of publicity with a business that I had. So I'm dyslexic. I'm not that well educated and I can't write for toffee, so PR frightens the living daylights out of me. So if I can do this, you guys can do this. And what I do is I teach people just the basics of how to approach the media, how to find your story and that emotional connection. And once you get going and it clicks, it's almost addictive because it's one of the most cost-effective ways to get new customers.
Okay, so what we'll do, it was in my mind anyway, to do something. Rachel, we'll have a chat during the week when it works, and we'll work out a couple of different ways of doing things. There is no doubt at the minute that if we make the right noise, there's an opportunity there. I think you've heard me say it before, most of you. I believe the last 2 weeks, has been challenging for everybody, but life is moving on. And it will move on. In business terms, it will move on, whether we like it or not. So we've got to do the stuff that works to make sure the business works, so people get paid, so we get some money, so we can pay people, and all that goes with it. So if that sounds like I'm banging on about it, it's because I'm banging on about it. And the reason why I'm doing that is otherwise the wheels are going to fall off everything. So one way of doing it is to get some positive noise and positive feedback. Rachel, if you and I have a chat about it, as usual, sure. and we'll work out some things. Anybody got any last minute questions? It's fine if you have. Yes, Steve, go. Unmute, Steve. Hang on, I've done it for you.
Hey,
yeah, I had.
Well, now he's put it back on.
There we go. Hang on a minute.
Don't put this man in charge of a radio station.
Jesus, you know.
Who
Go
would
on.
have thought? No, I just agree.
You see that big thing in front of you, Steve? It's a microphone.
Oh, it's been ages since Friday.
Come on,
Yeah,
Steve.
what
Go for it.
we discovered on, I agree with Rachel. Really, it's the emotional connection, and I'm amazed at how if you relax people on live radio, you get far more emotional connection, and you get some tremendous enthusiasm. And where we get the most feedback from listeners and people emailing and contacting is just admiring the level of enthusiasm. And they always mention the enthusiasm and the energy and everything first. And then they say, oh, and they really knew what they were talking about as well. But the enthusiasm and the emotional connection always comes first. And that's what we're all, you know, us amateurs like me who only do it once a week. That's what we're trying to get. That's what we're trying to achieve every time.
It's good feedback, that, Steve, actually. Thank you. Thank you for that. All joking aside, we all know Steve does a great job on Fridays on Black Country Radio. And quite a few of you have been on it at some point or another. And I know the door's open, so that's great. So round of applause for Rachel, please. You know,
Thanks for having me.
bless you. I'm going to share the screen again. Let's see if we can make